name's Ted Stevenson, and I have the pleasure of introducing my family. I have 4 members of my family still here with me, and to my left is Craig Stevenson, Tucker as he's better known, Russ Dennis, my brother-in-law, and behind me my sister Elizabeth. I've made a good living with Kodak. I've had an enjoyable life and met lots of people that I would consider friends and a lot of acquaintances over the years. I guess when I first started here, the nickname that I got was Young Stevie because of a large extended family that has been here for 83 years and 4 generations. We've, I guess the story goes that my grandfather Jack decided to get out of the coal mines in England and as a young man and emigrated to Canada. When he got here, he decided he was going to do the same for the rest of his family. So as he earned money, he'd save it and send back for family members. And I guess the best thing I can do to give you an idea of the extent that Kodak has, or the impact that Kodak has had on my family, I can just list as many names as I've been coached to remember. And it started with my grandfather Jack, who came here in 1922. Then he brought Chuck, and I won't get the right order after that, but there was Jordy, Alf, Tom, and Jim. And the sisters were Hilda, Nancy, Nora, Kitty, and my great-grandparents of Charles and Nancy. 9 of the 10 children worked here. The only one that didn't was Kitty, but she redeemed herself by marrying another Kodak employee by the name of Dave Somerville. I have a brother-in-law, Russ, wife, as I mentioned, Monica. I have another cousin, Charlene. Then my cousin Craig's sister, twin sister, Kathy, and her husband, Mike Zuccola. These are the family members that I can remember. I don't think I've left anyone out, and if I have, I'm sure one of these people that are here with me will point that out later. Anyway, thank you very much.
My older brother seemed to have forgotten a couple of people. Nancy Stevenson, which is spelled with a V, she married another Stevenson in here that is spelled with a V. And the second one is John Ferguson, who is married to Nora. And John Ferguson was the paymaster at Kodak for over 40 years. 12 years ago, when I started here on my first day, I worked in mail and file under May Whitehead. And my first run delivery was with the carts. And in those days, we had to wear high heels and skirts to deliver everywhere, and there were no tunnels. And the first day, we went out with our carts, and we were in Building 7 on the 3rd floor, and we went into the smaller elevator with 2 mail carts and 3 of us. And lo and behold, we pushed the button, and we got in between 2 floors, the 3rd and the 2nd, and the elevator stopped. And you know, the other 2 girls were panicking, and you know, I was calm and cool and collective, and I thought, okay, the phone's there, so I picked it up to get security. Of course, the phone didn't work, so there was no security, so we started to scream. And after about 15 minutes, they heard us screaming, and they had to actually call in the elevator contractors to come in. And while we were waiting for them, the elevator jumped and a cable broke around us. So then we got pretty panicky at that point. And anyway, about an hour and a half later, they got us out. And when the doors opened, everybody was there, including the president. And they sent us home for the day because it was pretty traumatic. That was my first day at Kodak. I did come back the next day, and I'm still here. And I have the pleasure of continuing on at Kodak in the transportation department after June 30th. So I'll carry our name on.
My name's Russ Dennis. I basically is part of the family because through marriage, my wife Catherine is Frank Stevenson's daughter. I started Kodak February 16th, 1970. Basically my wife's grandfather, Jack, said, why don't you go to the Kodak and put an application in, and which I did, and I'm glad I did. I've been here for over 35 years. I'm a maintenance team leader, and it's been a great experience. I'm just sad that it's closing the way it is. I was hoping to finish out and get my full retirement, but on a whole, I'm very pleased with my life here, and that's pretty well it.
Hi, my name's Craig Stevenson. A lot of people around Kodak know me better as Tucker. I've worked at Kodak here for 32 years almost. I'm the son of Tom Stevenson, who was one of the many Stevensons, who worked here for approximately 43 years. He was involved in a lot of sports around here with the hockey, the golf, the whole 9 yards. One story I particularly fond of remembering, as it was talked through the family over the years when we were all children, was, like previously Ted mentioned, Jack and Chuck and Alf all came over first. Well, I don't know whether it was a bi-weekly paycheck back then or weekly, but they would meet out in the railroad tracks to our right over here, and every week they would get together out there and more or less give out the money to each other to send back home. Well, my one uncle Chuck, he wasn't too fond of that idea every week because he liked to go out and have a good time himself. So, as I need to say, about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock every week of pay, they'd be out there having a big fisticuff fight. Just to get the money off the one brother to send it back. That's about all I have to say. I've been here, like I said, met a lot of friends, good company, had some good times, and sad to see the place go, but maybe something could happen out of it for all of us.
Hi there. As I was mentioning, there's two individuals by the name of Jack and Jim that were part of that long list. Jack was my grandfather, and he had an impact on a lot of Kodakers' lives because he was instrumental in starting the union back in 1950, I think it was, along with George Rassman and a few other people. Now there's an interesting story around that because a lot of people that signed union cards in those days didn't know that they had, because there was such a strong feeling that they needed to bring a union here. So they, I guess, basically forged some signatures. And when I think of Jim, had a very important job in the film emulsion area. He was general foreman over there for a lot of years. But also, what a lot of people don't know is that he was instrumental in bringing the credit union to Kodak Heights, and a lot of people have benefited by that. He was a charter member along with a number of other people. I guess that's about all I can say.
Hi, I'm Marg Griffin, and this is the Walters family at Kodak today. And this is Blair Walters, Lillian Goodenough, and Sue Manovich. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I started in 1968, and my uncle worked here, Blair's dad, and I carpooled in with Uncle Ernie Walters, who worked in color print and processing. And so for several years, he had me as a tag along on the way into work and back. And I started actually in building 11, which is still here, and almost immediately moved to building 5. And that would be an empty site at this point in time. So it's kind of a little bit of, the history of the site. Started in mail and file, which is kind of funny because I never really spent a day in mail and file, but I was transferred around and ended up in payroll. And between payroll and human resources / payroll when it was joined, that's pretty much how I've spent my time here at Kodak. What about you, Blair?
I guess our section of the Walters family started its history with Kodak Canada back in 1947 when my mother started as a student. And my grandmother joined her shortly thereafter in 1948, and then my father, Ernie Walters, started in 1950 and had a 37-year career here at Kodak. Some of the things I remember, I guess as a young child, was coming over to meet my dad when he got out of work, because we lived just up the street from Kodak, and the Christmas parties that we used to come to, myself and my two sisters, and at Christmas time. The other thing I remember was about 12 years old, my dad took me to a Toronto Maple Leafs hockey game, and a gentleman several rows in front of us stood up and said, "Hi, Ernie." And I asked my dad who that was, and it was the president, Lou Christie, and it always impressed me that the president knew my father. Myself, I started in 1971 in the yard and caretaking at the time. I can remember unloading silver bars down at the Silver Nitrate, and after a while I ended up in equipment service, and I was there for 28 years in the repair area, and for the last year and a half I've been responsible for security here at Kodak Canada. Back in the 70s, Kodak was much larger than it is now. It was very hustle and bustle, lots of activity, many more products being manufactured. I think sort of a self-sufficient organization here. We made our own boxes, box and print department, and it was a very interesting time because I think it was a growth period for the company.
I started in 1974 here at Kodak, and Blair is my brother. I started in mail and file, and from mail and file went to the estimating and planning department. At least that's what it was called back in those days. From there I went to graphics, and then from there I went to Kodak Technical Support, and that's where I've been for the last 15 years. One of the things that I guess really stand out in my mind was back in the late 70s and early 80s, there were so many young people here at Kodak. So we were always getting together to play a little bit of golf, basketball, baseball. So that was a really fun time at that time.
I remember when I first started with Kodak, it was in 1987, and by that time we were in the middle of the Toronto expansion project, so it was quite a bustling site. And my work experience prior to that was downtown in the impersonal office building. So I remember coming to work in the morning and everyone would smile at each other as I was walking into the office. And that really struck me as being a very family type environment here. You felt comfortable because we were all inside a secured area, so everyone was very comfortable with each other. That was very different from the experiences I'd had downtown in the past, where you get on the elevator and everyone just looks forward. So it was a really great beginning here. I started in finance, and I'm still in finance. Kodak has been very good to me in supporting all of my experience requirements for the accounting designation that I achieved while I was here. So I'm very grateful to Kodak for that support. It's wonderful, I find, having family at Kodak, because I can go into the cafeteria at lunchtime and we see each other, we catch up. I think our family's a lot closer because of that.
My name is Lou Francoeur, and I'm here representing my family and the in-laws of the Cuddies. And I'd like to take this opportunity, first of all, to present my wife, Georgina Francoeur, my daughter, Michelle Cuddy, our beautiful granddaughter, Paige. The lovely lady in yellow is Jeanette Cuddy, and I would say her lovely son, but I'll say just for today, Ross Cuddy. I started in Kodak in 1968 in plant services. I got then transferred to engineering and construction or maintenance, and I stayed there for 25 years until I was transferred for my last 10 years in customer service. Going back and maybe reminisce a bit, looking at the site, the physical site of a few buildings are now gone, but I'd like to mention Kodak, how great a company it was, and especially going back into the 70s and 80s and early 90s, where we had recreational activities that were just bountiful. Baseball, hockey, we had in the gym, we had basketball, we had golf tournaments. It was just endless. There have been a lot of changes, and right now I'm running out of stuff to talk about because I wasn't ready for this. So maybe the opportunity for someone else to go ahead and yak away for a while.
I started in 1974 in the payroll department. I stayed in that department for 15 months, and I moved to customer order service. In those days it was called order entry, and as working for microfilm BIS imaging. Stayed in that department for a few months, then they went in to work in the return. We do the credits and return and all of the same. We're all in a big area. It was the old mail and file and all the order entry, dealer service. Everybody was together. It was just like a big group of family. I think there must have been about 90 people in that area in those days, and which we had a great time. It was a great group of people, and Kodak was a great family and excellent people to work with, warehouse people. Everybody you dealt with was excellent to work with. And we had, in the early days, we had baseball. I was a pitcher. George Grigger was in charge of the recreation, and I was pitcher for the baseball team. I played volleyball. So we had great time. We played baseball against the Brampton team and marketing against us, and it was like a big, great family. And then I had my daughter Michelle and my other daughter Natalie, and I used to work at the Christmas parties during the Christmas, bring the kids, and the president be there, everybody be there, and it was a great time to be all together.
I started at Kodak in 1977. I've been in quite a few departments. I've been in Brampton for a while. I've really enjoyed working at Kodak. I spent most of my time in the warehouse. That's where I am now. I'll be there till June 30th. And I've really enjoyed being here. That's about it.
Hi, I'm Ross Cuddy. I work at Kodak here for 21 years. About 20 of the years I worked in the Building 13, the film alley. Now it's a paper alley. We coat the inkjet paper now. I remember back in '77, we grew up just at the down of this hill here. We were, remember my mom used to walk home from work and used to wait for her at the old Dairy Queen at the end of the hill back in '77. And then now the Dairy Queen's gone, now Kodak's gone.
I started at Kodak in 1987 as a summer student in the National Operating Center, and worked there for a few years, and then I moved on to the credit department. I've had good memories in both departments I've worked in or work in, but my fondest memories are when I was a child. And I used to come here and I used to walk through those doors over there, and I used to come to the Christmas parties for the children. I used to get my present. I was always excited. And always coming to movie nights on Fridays. And they had a theater group, and I'll never forget coming to see The Wizard of Oz. That was a really fond memory I've had. I've been fortunate. I've met my in-laws, my husband here at this company, as part of baseball, where all the manufacturing people got together and all the office people, and we'd go out there and slug it out on the diamonds, and we got together, and this is how this family's been.
My name's Stu Irvin. This is my daughter, Heather Greco. We represent a family that's been at Kodak a number of years, not a large number of us, but over quite a number of years. It goes back to my wife Isabel's grandfather. Mr. Andrade was his name. He was in the Boer War. He came out to Canada after the Boer War, settled in Mount Dennis, and got a job at Kodak for a very short time in the Mount department. That would be about 1925. His daughter which is my wife's mother, started at Kodak in about 1927. And she was here until about 1932 when she got married. Now, she was a spooler, and in those days the film was hand spooled. So she had very quick fingers and was a fairly fast spooler, and she worked for a number of years until she was married and was called back on numerous occasions when more film was required during the summer months or at Christmas, up until close to 1948. I came to Kodak December the 5th of 1960 and was here until 1995. Now, before I came to Kodak, I was looking for work. I was with a pharmaceutical company, and I asked a number of people about various places to work. Every time the Kodak name was mentioned, everyone said, "Oh, that's a good place to work." And I said, "Well, why is it a good place to work?" "Well, they pay well, they treat their people well," so it sounded pretty decent to me. Anyway, I thought I'd drive by the place. So I drove by, and I saw these great gray concrete buildings, not that pleasant looking, and I thought, have I got the right place? Is this a prison or a jail? What is this? So I drove by, and I went home, and I asked a few questions, and determined that it was Kodak. So the next day I showed up here with my resume, and within a week or two I was hired to work at Kodak. Okay, from 1960 to 1970 I was getting my feet wet in the industry. I'm a chemist, and was getting the type of work that I enjoyed. And during the 1970 era, the company, which had a huge market all over the world, and had most of the market, we wear photography, was suddenly being questioned by people like the Japanese who had the ability to produce product and produce it well. So in about 1970, we started to get product brought into this company that was just as good as ours and 25% less in price. I should say 25% less in price. So talk about a challenge. And this is what I'd like to mention, is one of the greatest challenges we had in my time with Kodak was that challenge to get our prices down and our quality up. So from that time on, we went to work at doing a better job, making a better product, and trying to meet the competition, and that never stopped from the time I was there in 1970 to 1995, and still went on after I left. So to me, that was one of the most exciting things that ever happened to me at Kodak. I wanted to also mention that, and Heather will be talking in a minute about her time at Kodak, my son-in-law, Christopher, came to Kodak in I think it would be 85, about 85, and it was at a time of great hiring. I mean, in my era, we never really went through a lot of great hiring. It was off and on, but this was an era where we had got some new business. A lot of this technology I've talked about, we were getting new business, and we were enlarging, and we needed more people, and we were hiring, and I think we were hiring about 70 people, which is a large number. And Christopher came from the Midwest, the same as I did, and my daughter told him to put an application in, and he put his application in, and first thing you know, Christopher's changed his living places. He was in Portage la Prairie, Manitoba. He's now in Toronto, and he came and got a job here and has worked since, up until the last few months, and done a fine work as a product handler, running power trucks and various things like that. So that's another member of the family that's put time in here at Kodak.
I started in started with Kodak June 4th, 1984, and just celebrated my 21st anniversary with Kodak. Initially, I was like all the other young women that had just got married. I was planning on doing this until I had my first child. and I'm still here 2 children later. I enjoy the benefits of working at Kodak. The extra paycheck comes in handy, and I really have enjoyed all the different jobs I've done over the years. I started out in transportation and customs. I worked with Jim McDowell, Larry Best, Linda Blaine. I was the export clerk. I manually typed all the GTs for every single trailer that left this plant to go to Rochester. And Tuesdays and Thursdays were the worst days. We had sundry trailers, which meant I could have anywhere from 20 to 250 GTs to type, and then I would have to photocopy them. It was mind-boggling, but it was a lot of fun. And about 2 years after I joined the company, they brought in one computer, plopped it on a back desk, and told us to play on it. And it was amazing how fast technology took place, because within 2 years we all had them on our desks. I remember having to walk over to the cafeteria in the middle of a snowstorm. There was no such thing as bridges. I remember the garage, which was out in the, I think it's the south parking lot of Building 11. When I had to go out and do some customs clearances, they actually trained me to fill in as a backup and go out to the truck terminal in the airport to do customs clearances, and the Kodak car would be sitting there warmed up, full of gas, the windshield wiper ready to go, because the mechanics in the garage had that ready for you. And I look around and think of all the changes that have happened, buildings that are no longer there, that are now open fields. It's sad to see these changes, but it also makes me realize how much older I'm getting. So it's sometimes frightening when I realize all the changes that have taken place. But like they say, change is for the better, and we can only go on from here and get better.
During the course of the number of people in our family that have worked at Kodak, and as I say, it's not a huge number, but there's quite a span of time. I've had 2 daughters, Lisa and Allison, and 1 son, Fraser, who all did a full stint as summer students as long as they were allowed to work as summer students. And believe me, that was one of the great benefits of working at Kodak. In fact, I can remember vividly my boss saying to me one time when his son started working, he said, "You know, this is like a bonus. My boy can come out here and make a good wage for the summer to help him through his university." And I certainly agreed with him. It was a wonderful, wonderful gift that was given, and it was given out fairly too. It was given by the number of years you were here as to how long your children could work for the summer. Of course, they had to perform, and believe me, when my kids left the house that morning, they got a lecture that they better not do anything that would upset my career with their little career. We made that very clear to them as we went out the door. And you can ask them and they'll tell you.
My name is Al Hall, and I worked at Kodak for 50 years. Started in May the 25th, 1928, and finished in 1978 with a complete 50 years. And on my right, I have my son, Ron Hall, and on the back, I have Betty Hall, his wife. On the left here, I have my son, Barry Hall, and his wife is left to him, Jean Hall. On the back, I got to look at Betty, Ron's wife, and behind that is Pam and Sherry and Tracy. And my first job at Kodak was to work in the powder and solution. Now, most of these people that I've got behind me have never heard of it before, but they contained of doing all the chemicals for the entire plant, and for all those chemicals that were sold out to people like Abel's, Blacks, and all the stores downtown did their own developing. Some of it was pretty gruesome. I could see we worked in the basement of Building 5, and every night I had to sweep up. When I went in the morning, there was many times was water on the floor because the stuff melted so easily with the humidity and whatnot. From there, I used to get it on my hands and I'd go home and I'd pick up my knife and fork to have my lunch or my dinner, and it would leave a stain across my hands. That's one of the big things I objected to working there. But after that, after 7.5 years there, I was finally promoted to the cleaning staff, believe it or not, in the office building. We used to come in and clean the office in the morning, 6 o'clock till 3:30, I think it was. And from there I moved to, from there after 7.5 years, I worked over moved into the stockroom. I was there for a number of years. When I got into the stockroom, it was a very good job. We had to handle all the things that most people would have to use if they were delivered to the people that would come into a hardware store. We had over 15,000 items, I believe it was, in the stockroom at that time. And it was electrical and plumbing and carpenter stuff and everything that imaginable, from little wee pipes of 1/8 to 12-inch pipes. We used to have to handle these during construction. And from there, I was promoted to supervisor of the department, where we had as many as 8 people working for me. And it was a good job, but a very rewarding job. And it was a good place to work regardless, because all my children have had some phase to being involved with the Kodak, and it's been kind of nice to be home and hear them come back to our place and tell us what was going on and what wasn't. And even after I retired, which I retired in 1978, that's 25 years ago, I think, this January coming up. But after that, I just enjoyed life, period.
I'm Barry Hall. I started working with Kodak Canada on June the 18th, 1956. I stayed there for 31 years. I've got to say that my first 15 years were probably the best. I had a great time, met a lot of good people. I, like my dad, play a lot of sports, and I've actually been very fortunate that I've bowled on the same team as my dad. I've golfed with him. I've actually won the same tournament he won, only I won it 50 years later after he did. Our family has been pretty lucky. I've got 5 kids, and 4 of them have worked there at Kodak. 2 of them are still there. I've met a lot of good people. I met my wife Jean there. That's about 30 years ago.
I'm Jean Hall, and I started at Kodak in 1973. I was there for 22 years. Within that time, I worked the first 10 years in camera department, where I met my husband Barry, and Betty and I worked together. We had a wonderful time. It was the nicest group of people that I've ever met in my life. We had such a wonderful time. And the ladies and gentlemen, but the ladies in the camera department, they worked very, very hard, and I think they were recognized once the camera department closed down as being the best workers at Kodak. I just have to say the people at Kodak have been absolutely wonderful. I've had many great mentors in my life. Al Patchett was one, Bill Dern, Don Thompson, just people who encouraged you to do your best, and I'll always remember them.
I'm Ron Hall. I started at Kodak in 1966 after spending 6 years in the Army. I was fortunate that my dad helped me get into Kodak. But all my time at Kodak, I was either known as Alfie's kid or Barry's kid brother. And after a while, it was Betty's husband. And then I'd go over to sensitizing department, then it was Tracy's father. So I am Ron, the one that's forgotten. I started off in plant services. I was there for about 6 months and I got a job in the warehouse. I spent 5 years in the warehouse. After the warehouse, they were opening up a plastic molding department. It was a new department, and my brother Barry was a foreman there, and I applied for the job. I didn't think I'd get it, but I did. And that was a treat working for Big Brother. But I enjoyed it, my time in plastic molding. After that, my dad had retired by this time, and I got a job in the stockroom in his old department. And I was in there for 6 years or so, and then they ended up starting a new department, the pet department, and I spent 12 years there. And after those 12 years, they were closing the plant down, the pet department, and I retired from there.
Hi, I'm Betty Hall. I've worked at Kodak for almost 29 years. I started off in the camera department as a temporary for 4 years. It was a great time. I took full-time after that, and from then on I've worked in many different departments. It started off the camera, closing. I went to paper finishing. I went to KPL. I went to material stores. I went to the warehouse. And at the warehouse I spent my last 12 years, I believe. And all the time I was there, I had a great time. I met a lot of nice people. I can honestly say I think Kodak gave me a lot of confidence. I was put into to the safety department, the health and safety, and that gave me a lot of knowledge. I joined the union, and I was a representative for the union. It was enjoyable to be with all the people and work with them and help them. And I must say, Kodak's been good to my family all these years. Thank you.
I've been working there for almost 19 years. I started in 1985, and I was temporary because at the time the Brampton plant was closing, so they wouldn't hire permanently. So I was there for 18 months and getting married, so I needed a permanent job, and I left Kodak for a short time, and they hired me back after about 6 months when they were starting to hire everybody back full-time, and the Brampton plant was closed and everybody was moving. I remember when, as a child, when my parents, or my dad actually, worked at Kodak, and we used to go to the curling club there. He was a member there, and we used to go and watch them curl. And I remember baseball, when he played baseball as a young child, and I thought it was pretty cool. Every time we drove in, even to pick him up from Kodak, seeing the big plant and everything, all these huge buildings, it was very impressive as a child. And then eventually I started working there. And I've been there, like I said, almost 19 years. I've enjoyed it. I've had made a lot of good friends, and a lot of people that I've worked with over the years. A lot of people have left, and I feel like now there's not too many people you know anymore.
I'm Sherry. I've worked at Kodak now for 27 years, and I remember when I was young, about 14, 15 years old, and I used to beg my father if I could come to work at Kodak, even if it was just cleaning garbages. I wanted to work at Kodak. So my goals in life were to work at Kodak and get married and raise a family. And I've done everything I wanted to do, and it's turned out really great. And Kodak's been good to our family, and thank you.
Hi, I'm Tracy Hall. I worked for Kodak since 1984 until the closing this June. Then I'll be out of work. Thank you. No, you know, my parents been working at Kodak for most of my life, and I always heard good things about Kodak and heard from my grandfather and my aunt and uncles how good Kodak was. And then right out of high school at age 18, I joined and got hired on full time. And back then it was cool because it was like a family back then. I found now today, if you look at Kodak, it's not so much as a family. It's more of a industry, and it's too bad that it happens, but it's, you know, it's the going world, I guess. The thing I'm going to miss about Kodak is friends I made in there, and you know, once you leave, you kind of probably lose touch of it with everybody. But I'm glad that I won't lose touch with my family, because they'll always be around. And you know, for 21 years being there, that I have to admit that I had a good time. I played a lot of sports and that, as follow these guys' steps. It came nowhere close to these guys, but I tried.